On Sean Toole here, and in this episode number 3 of Mergers, Acquisitions and Deals, a London-based entrepreneur, Hery Heny, explains how he is able to acquire a training company with what I would say is quite an unusual approach. And you'll hear more as we go through this interview. Don't forget to subscribe below, hit that notification bell so that you get the latest videos as they appear, and enjoy the video. Okay, so welcome to the podcast, and I'd like to introduce Hery. Hery, welcome to the MAD podcast.
Thank you, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're really excited to be here. I know you've got a great case study that you want to share with us. But just to get us started, would you be kind enough just to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your background, please?
So I hail from Madagascar, grown up in Finland and Germany, and I now live in London. And I'm 40 years old this year, and I've been an entrepreneur, businessman from the age of 15 when I started my first company. I worked in big consulting and Deloitte consulting in mergers and acquisitions for 8 years in between, but I have always been an entrepreneur. I have 6 companies at the moment. I've just divested 1, and I purchased 2 last year.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so you've got a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. And yeah, that sounds great. So could you tell us about the case study that we're looking to talk about today?
So the most recent case is a training and conferencing company that essentially has the ambition to link the Nordics with East Africa, which is one of the world's fastest growing economic areas, grows faster than China, has a middle class of 140 million consumers, and is English speaking and in the same time zone as Eastern Europe. So very easily accessible to us, or at least was pre-COVID. And essentially there has all of the conferencing that goes on with sort of an Africa twist are always glorified aid conferences. So credible, sensible businessmen on both ends in the Nordics as well as East Africa don't actually like those kind of events because they feel it's unbalanced. What people want is proper qualified networking where you meet peers rather than people who are looking for investment or aid or anything like that. So I thought that was a great opportunity, and the company had a number of gaps. They had identified a great market. They had a good skill set to begin with. They had a good customer base. They were technologically savvy, but they had a number of things that they weren't very good at. So I worked with them for a while, and they actually approached me and said, "Well, we'd like to have you as an investor. We know you invest. We know you scale companies. We'd like to have you join us," and they proposed an amount that they would have liked to have.
Hery, how did they contact you? Was this on LinkedIn or was it some other way?
So this was I'm a fairly well-known public speaker in the Nordics. So they were looking for someone. Funnily enough, they were looking for someone who would MC their main event.
Right. Yes.
And so we got to talking, and basically I was in a way I was auditioning. They wanted to know my background, my understanding of the East African markets, and as well as the Nordics. And I've got plenty of business background in East Africa, with my family being from Madagascar as well. And so when I started working with them, it became apparent that there were a number of processes missing, a number of things that could have been done better. And I just started doing them. And so they were trying to keep me on board. And they made me an offer. They said, "Listen, we're gonna give you 1/3 of the company for this price." And I actually ignored those offers. I said, well, you know, in a nutshell, I showed them what would happen if I left. So I kept working where I said, listen, I'm actually not interested in investing my own cash. I think the potential is massive, these are the things that I bring to the table. And instead of telling them what I'd done in the past, instead of telling them what I would intend to do, I just showed them. And we just started doing things and acquiring customers very quickly and linking with the right kind of people and changing the processes. And sort of, I held my nerve. I also enjoyed myself, of course. I enjoy that kind of thing. I held my nerve for the better part of 3 months, until we then agreed on a valuation of €100, 50 for each of the founders, and that was sort of the lowest that we could do. We can't do the £1, which some people talk about as sort of a token amount. In the Nordics, it has to be slightly more, so that it does actually incur tax. So the 50 euros incurred 17 euro cents in tax. And that times 2 would be 35 euro cents in tax, which is sort of 30 cents is the minimum that the taxman will actually come for. So it's a bit of an anecdote, really, but that's how we agreed on it, and that's how we move forward.
So you paid 50 euros, and they gave you how much of the company?
50 euros times 2 for 33% of the company.
Okay. And what was interesting about that is that you went in there, you did what I guess people call a bit of sweat equity, and you built that relationship, you built that rapport without having any agreements in place, and it actually worked out really well.
Well, I mean, you said it. I mean, it's sweat equity, and then the key here is the rapport, because it's not just that they need to like me. I also need to figure out whether I want to work with them, and quite frankly, I think people are way too concerned about spending the time, because in a worst case scenario, you walk away and you've learned something, and you've missed out on a little bit of Netflix or Amazon Prime. And the best case scenario, this happens, right? So it's people are so precious about time that they don't get paid for, when really with what they would do with their time otherwise, in my mind, actually they not only don't get paid for, but they actually have a negative return on investment, because they don't do anything clever with it. So I didn't mind doing that, and actually that's how I've operated all my life. I mean, if as long as I learn something and it's interesting, it's time well spent. Why not?
That's fantastic. Now, I appreciate some of the information may be confidential. I kind of just wondered the kind of things that you're doing for this company. How are you helping them and supporting them to grow and scale their business?
Well, first of all, I leveraged my existing connections. So I reached out to people and I said, listen, there might be a win-win here. So simply bringing people to the table who were able to enthusiastically help immediately, and you'll notice that about the entrepreneurial community. I think in most countries, people are really happy to help each other and take a long-term view. So just simply asking for help is a clever way, I think, of moving things forward. The other things, very practical things, looking at the cash flow. Looking at what sourcing their indirect spend and finding ways to optimize that immediately, building a proper sales funnel with the kind of habits that get you started on the most important things first thing in the morning. So sales funnel is really a morning activity. If you're trying to scale, you need to start every morning with sales, business development. And then finding things that even they were sort of concerned about. They wanted to do everything themselves. And that's quite typical, and to a degree that is a clever thing to do for an entrepreneur, because you need to be savvy enough so that you can't be tricked or cheated, right? So you need to understand your own company well enough so that you're able to operate it no matter what. But there comes a time when you have a very clear strength that manifests itself, and there's other things that you should really outsource. So accounting easily springs to mind,
yeah,
for instance, or payroll. They cost money, you feel you don't have them, when really at the end of the day, it's 3 pints or it's 6 pints a month. Can you really not find a different way to make that money back, especially if you free up time and much more importantly, emotional bandwidth, because you'll get so much energy back, because you don't spend the energy on things that that really tires you because you don't like doing that. So those kind of things we fixed very, very quickly, and we took sort of the fear of outsourcing certain things away out of the equation. And I had, of course, recommendations for people who would be able to help and would want to help on sort of in a cost-effective way as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love the sales and marketing first thing in the morning. That's a concept that I'm very familiar with and utilize. And you know, if you can generate a lot of leads for your business, it solves a lot of problems if you're able to convert those leads into sales. So yeah, I really like that. And it's a question of priorities, is it not?
Absolutely. And I mean, the number one reason startups fail is a lack of sales. It's not a lack of products or that the product wasn't good enough. It's lack of sales. Simple as that.
Fantastic. So you mentioned a few processes there, things that you've had to tweak and to improve and to implement. How long has this process taken to get it to a stage where you're happy with it, or do you feel like it's continually ongoing?
Yeah, it'll never end, right? So you'll, for instance, look at things like what is a minimum viable product when it comes to things like your website, your degree of digitalization, for example. So if you think about this, what was state of the art in 2019 doesn't even allow you to compete in 2020 during a pandemic. So it is something ongoing, but I think what one needs to do very, very quickly is identify the low-hanging fruit, and implement as quickly as possible in small sprints. So I'll always look at it from the perspective of, right, what can we do to increase value within 2 weeks? And it's not sort of the 100 days is actually a long time, because everyone talks about 100-day plans. But that's great, but this is 2021. I mean, you know, opening a bank account no longer takes you all kinds of paperwork and 14 days. Setting up a website, including using, I think the last website that I did myself, and I'm by no means an expert, I just needed one quickly, including integration with payments, PayPal and credit cards, took me 48 hours. It was a weekend, right? So really, I'd sort of look at what I want, and I'd reverse engineer how quickly that can be done, and you'd be surprised how much it can do in a month with a bit of focus. 100 days really is a long time. Sure. In some senses. So a lot of the value can be released in the first 2 weeks.
Okay. And the future for your business?
Bright.
Because you've got 6 businesses, right?
Yeah. So I mean, they sort of they're complementary to each other. This one, the one with connecting Nordics and East Africa. I mean, the future is bright. East Africa continues to grow. Is not suffering from the pandemic as badly as Europe, because the population is so much younger as well. Plus, you have lots of open space and warm weather. It is an area that's going to continue to grow, and I predict boldly that the time for aid is almost over. If you look at East Africa as a market, Kenya has a better internet saturation than most of the European countries. Setting up a business in Rwanda Rwanda in business friendliness would make the top 10 in Europe easily. So it's all there, and plus there's a healthy consumer base. So the region is actually looking for partners and for customers rather than for people to give them handouts. So I'm quite taken with the developments there, and I think future looks bright.
That sounds great. So would you say there's anything that you would have done differently with this deal, or do you feel like you executed it as best as you possibly could?
I mean, you know, yes, it was well executed. It was easy to do. It was a good fit. I suppose I might not have gone for something that relies this heavily on travel a few months before a pandemic. But then again, when sort of both your cost base as well as your revenue base is tied up with the customers. So if we don't have events going on, then there's also very little cost. So I suppose it's a good thing for the future. We're ready for it. But I would have looked at, I would have been more, we've had a long upturn, haven't we? I mean, what, 11 years until last year. So it's been the longest business cycle in recorded history on an upward trend. So I guess a little bit of risk aversity in terms of what are long-term growth sectors and which ones are perhaps profitable now, but will actually, you know, time's running out for them anyway. Would have been something. I would have been slightly more risk averse, perhaps, in hindsight, not just because of the pandemic, but just generally.
Yeah. Okay. So, so there's going to be a lot of people listening to this, budding entrepreneurs that are looking to move into mergers, acquisitions, and deals. I know you've got a lot of experience. You started when you were very young. Was it 16, 17?
Yeah, 15 was my
15.
first.
Yeah. So there you go. So, what would you say to a budding entrepreneurs that are looking to move into this sector?
Okay, can I be slightly harsh? I'll be a little bit blunt, just for argument's sake, right? So 95% of entrepreneurs, and this is lowballing it, fail. And what I see, if you find yourself to be someone who has analysis paralysis, so dwells on things for 300 days because you're just not sure you've covered all the bases, you do need to rethink your career. Entrepreneurship is all about taking action every day and quickly. And sometimes it's small actions, small consistent actions, and sometimes it's bigger decisions and bigger moves. But you need to always be moving forward towards whatever it is that you're trying to do. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult because, and here's sort of a soundbite, speed is objective, quality is subjective. So, you know, for instance, when you post on social media, you might wonder that you actually didn't like that post so much, but it did fantastically well, or you crafted the perfect piece of art, but no one really liked your post. And the only way you can really hack that game, the entrepreneurial game, is you need to execute at speed and then look backwards and see what worked and what didn't. And using that example of the social media post, if you post 100 times in 100 days, chances are that you're now able to do quality at speed. But if you post 10 times in 100 days, you'll have no data. You won't really know what worked and what didn't. And you've just spent an awful lot of time dwelling. So quality follows speed in all things entrepreneurial.
Yeah, sure. That's a great bit of knowledge bomb, if you don't mind me saying. That's really great. And well, thank you for sharing your experience of that case today. I found it fascinating.
Great pleasure.
And I guess. Well, what are you looking for, Hery, at the moment? Do you want people to reach out to you for something specific?
I mean, I'm incredibly outgoing. I get my energy from people. I'm very extroverted, so I just love it when people drop me a note on LinkedIn and want to have a chat. So I usually have multiple chats going on. I get my energy, I get my feedback from the market via LinkedIn, for instance. So people look me up on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect and to chat. Also, my website, heryhenry.com, has a lot of content for entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs. So always looking to connect.
Okay. So those that are listening today, his website is Hery, Hery Heny, HENRY.com. And if you're on LinkedIn, it's Hery_Christian Henry. Yes?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, experience, and skills today. And thank you.
Sean, thank you so much for the invitation.
Enjoyed that episode with Hery Henry. And can I ask you please to subscribe below and hit that notification bell, and you'll get all the latest videos as they are released. Now, episode number 4, the next case study that we'll be releasing is with entrepreneur Chris Isbell. Now, Chris will be sharing how he acquires day nurseries, and you're going to find it really fascinating. So please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you will have that video as it's released. Bye for now. See you soon.